So Taran, thank you for joining me. I really appreciate your time. I know you're busy. I know you got a lot going on, and taking an hour, 2 hours, hopefully not 3 hours out to talk to me. I really appreciate it. So thank you.
Thanks for having me.
No
I'm excited.
Problem. I think today we'll try to keep it short, even though it's not going to be short, but I will make a genuine effort to keep it short. It's hot as hell out here. You're a super interesting person. You're super young, relatively. If it's a 100-year game, you're 27, 26. 27. When's your birthday?
January 3rd.
January 3rd,
Capricorn.
Which makes you a Capricorn.
Yeah. What are you again? Did we talk about this?
Oh, Virgo. We did not talk about this.
Oh, okay.
You into that type of thing?
Super into it. Yeah.
Oh, no.
I'll tell you about this app later that you got to download.
You can tell me about it now.
Okay.
What's this app?
It's not sponsored.
Oh.
Do you guys, is this sponsored? Is there like a B-roll?
Oh, yeah, we have a B-roll.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it's called Pattern App. And you put in like your first name, last name, city you were born, and the time.
Yeah.
And then it's not like a usual astrology app with like just your horoscope, but it actually gives you like your life patterns. So and they change. Like, so it'll tell you like the dates and like the phase you're in. And then the best part about it is when you add friends, it tells you which patterns you share, and then every day it gives you like a notification about like you and that person. Like really interesting insights.
I don't know.
But so far that it's been freakishly accurate for anyone that I've like shared it with.
Yeah, but how true is that? Or how true is it just like, oh, you saw it, so it came to be? Like, for instance, if you're like thinking about, if you just had a meeting about how to market a vegetable company and you keep on noticing radishes, like, oh my God, radishes are everywhere. You have recency bias, don't you think?
Yeah. So like usually astrology apps and like horoscopes are super generic. So they can relate to anyone, but this is like extremely specific. And then it's not even just like predicting what's going to happen, but it tells you stuff that's happened. I'll show you after.
Okay. All right. I'm a skeptic.
I'll add you as a friend.
So you'll get a notification today. Don't talk to Joss. He's on some other shit. He's in retrograde. Mercury's in retrograde for him or something
Mercury's
like that.
Always in retrograde.
Yeah. Depending on your type of life.
Like I think around the time I saw you is when Mercury retrograde was ending, and there's like that checklist on Instagram where it's like things that will happen to you during Mercury retrograde, and like everything on the Instagram checklist happened to me. Like missing a flight, an ex coming into your life, like every single thing.
Oh no.
Yeah. So this is an astrology podcast now.
I love it. You're a little bit superstitious in a way, which like really surprises me because you're a super practical person. Like you're really practical and logical and like efficient in your approach in business and life. And then you're kind of just like, well, the stars, here, let me tell you about the stars real quick.
I'm like pretty woo woo as well.
Really?
Yeah.
Damn. Shout out to you for having a balance.
I guess so.
It's hard. I get, listeners know.
I'm pretty like, I'm all about like keeping my energy clean. Me and Sue talk about this all the time.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
Like, I stage my apartment like when I'm around people, but I stage myself when I get home around negative people. I did it after I met with you. No, I'm kidding.
Oh my God. I was that toxic for you. Oh my
I'm totally
God.
Joking.
Shit. Yeah. So I met with this guy. I went home and immediately showered and saged because he was fucking up my energy and environment like crazy. Anyways, so the listeners will have already heard an introduction, but you are someone who's gone out, raised a ton of money, achieved a lot for your age, gone down many different paths and done many different things when you haven't had a lot of time, which is very interesting. So you clearly have some sense of urgency in your life, which is even more interesting. When you're out and you're introducing yourself to an angel investor, or you're just introducing yourself to a person in business, and they're kind of like, so Taran, like what are you about? What's your thing? How do you introduce yourself? How do you want yourself to be perceived?
That's a good question. Yeah, I really believe in being yourself at work. And like that's something that like is important to me for my team. Want everyone to feel like they can be themselves, not that you have to like turn off a switch when you're like in work mode. Right. That being said, I did feel like over the course of like pitching my business, I became like almost like you channel this like Sasha Fierce, or like you have to be a little more. I'm Canadian, super like we talked about this last time, like you are reasonable and you're quite humble. But the thing with raising money is you have to be pretty confident like you need to be self-aware, but you also do need to come across confident. And so that's something I had to work on for sure. Just having that like certainty and conviction, although I am someone that has a lot of conviction in my vision. So like once like the ball got rolling, that wasn't so hard. But I think what I usually really want people to leave with is knowing like the why behind why I'm doing this and why it matters to me. So it makes it easier for me to channel my energy and my conviction into talking about the mission of the company. Because that's usually what I want them to be left with.
How do you actually convey that? They're like, hi, I'm Taran. I'm blank. I'm something. I'm a spiritual powerhouse from Canada. I don't know.
So I usually lead with like telling the story of why we started and the impact we're trying to make. So like I told you last time, when we talked to our audience of women, 60% of them could pinpoint that their self-esteem plummeted when they went through puberty. And that's also around the age, like 9 to 12 is when most girls drop out of STEM fields and sports, which is something that is really detrimental to all of society, because there's a ton of extremely smart girls growing up and dropping out of sports and STEM when they could be like achieving amazing things. And there's also like a similar stat that says a girl's confidence actually peaks at age 9. That's when it peaks. That's
their entire life.
Yeah, and I don't know how like accurate that is now. Like I think that's really changing, and like it's obviously hard to measure. But
Easy
when you
for you to say, you're a pretty confident person.
I don't know.
No,
I mean, I am a confident person, but I feel like we all probably come across more confident than we always are.
Sure.
Yeah, I'm not really an overthinker, but like,
really,
you know.
I don't know. I think you're super insightful, but I'll challenge that a little bit. You're definitely, you think about, you are maybe not an overthinker, but you're an abstract thinker. You try to definitely look at things from different dimensions. I mean, look at the nature of your business. I mean, that's a different approach that you took. Like, I mean, you took on monsters, pharmaceutical monsters, and who are your main competitors actually? Actually, let's give a little bit more context. So what is your product? What do you sell? How do you sell it? And then who are your competitors?
Okay, so tying into that stat, is the fact that, so we're in like the personal care industry, and the first product we started with was organic pads and tampons. And the reason was we found out what was actually in mainstream pads and tampons.
Which is?
Pesticides, like the cotton's grown with pesticides, bleach, all kinds of things that you probably don't want in your bloodstream, because you're like, you know, the walls of your vagina literally absorb what's in tampons.
Absolutely.
And so when we found that out, we wanted to provide like another option. And in Canada, it was really hard to buy organic pads and tampons except for Whole Foods. Now they're like much more widely available. That was the first product. And then when we found out more, digging into like other products that girls use when they go through puberty, we ended up launching the natural acne treatment and the deodorant and all those other products. So I'd say our biggest competitors are still obviously the like incumbents, Kotex, Secret Deodorant, Clean and Clear.
But I'm thinking even bigger than that. Like I'm thinking like Procter and Gamble, Johnson & Johnson.
Exactly.
Like these are behemoths.
You're right.
These are literally some of the biggest companies in the world. You're like, I want a market share.
It's so interesting that you bring that up, is because like Kimberly-Clark and P&G are like the only two brands that have been selling pads and tampons for over 100 years. There's been hardly any innovation. Right. Yeah, and up until recently. Yeah.
Listen, I mean, personal care products are cool. They're interesting, and you found a dynamic way to like approach them, which is like really hard, especially when industries get monopolized. Innovation usually ceases. Like if you want an example of that in BC, look at BC Ferries. Like there's a monopoly there; they don't have to innovate, right? Procter & Gamble or Johnson & Johnson owns, all of this industry. There's no reason for them to innovate. Their profit margins are there. It's beautiful. It's a well-oiled machine. It's moving forward. But the thing about that is, it's not us as a human race. Like we constantly need innovation. We constantly need competition. I know I sound like a capitalist here, but it's beautiful to see someone like you coming through and creating competition and creating a force, although it's early stage, sure, but there's obviously white space there. So that's really beautiful. And on top of that, you have this theme of, yeah, these products are cool. We've identified an issue and we're tackling it. But beyond that, I mean, the stuff that you guys are doing in sex ed, or just even the example that you're putting out there. You mentioned to me earlier, you can't be what you can't see. Who was that? Was that a quote? Or was that
I didn't come up with it.
Was that
I don't know who said it though.
Oh, you should have just said, yeah, that was me.
I love that you said that in like the BC Ferries example. It's funny because this is something that affects not the ferries, but the pads and tampons, 50% of the population. And like the fact that there's no innovation, right? Like almost all women get their period at some point. And that just like sends a message that we don't care about,
Absolutely.
right? Like girls are already taught not to talk about it.
Right.
It's super taboo, getting better. But that message just keeps saying like that you should feel shame and you should feel stigma. Like it's not even worth
bringing up.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah, and that's something that a lot of people don't even have to deal with. But I mean, that exists. When I say a lot of people, I mean the other sex, obviously. I mean, but that's that theme of like, yeah, don't even worry about it. Like, don't talk about it. It's stigmatized. Mm-hmm. You're fighting the good fight there in multiple ways. It's not just about tampons. Like, it's also about how you're attacking a business world that's sexist, essentially, how you're going to venture capitalists that's like dominated by men as well, how you're literally innovating on the ground level as well with education. There's many different ways that you're going like against this. Against is maybe the wrong word, but you're presenting another power, or you can be part of another power, which is like really cool. And you're becoming that example in terms of, you know, they couldn't see a way forward. When I say they, I mean young women couldn't see a way forward in innovating and disrupting sectors or industries. Now it's like, oh, there's a disruptor over there that's a woman, because I don't know of many disruptors that are women. And I know I'm wrong in saying that. I just intuitively know, but it's like, it's not publicized. It's not at the front facing, like at least for me, who's a guy in Canada. Right?
Like I think there's definitely a lot. There's so many women doing amazing things, and that's what's helped me move forward. And like exactly what you said, where it's like you can't be what you can't see. And I'm super grateful that there are so many women paving the path now. I think this is super cheesy, but one of the first people that I felt really inspired by was actually Sophia Amoruso from Girl Boss when I read her book, because she was like, I think you and I talked about this last time too, but just like an anti-capitalist, hated big corporations. She used to like dumpster dive. Oh my gosh. She was like a hippie. But the cool thing was seeing her build her business, starting on eBay, and then just figuring it out along the way. Everything from hiring staff to raising venture. And there's now a lot of women in D2C. There's women that have IPO'd their companies in the last few years. One of the most iconic things I saw last year was the CEO and founder of Stitch Fix, Katrina Lake, had her like 1-year-old son on her hip at the NASDAQ. Like,
wow.
When her company IPO'd.
That's iconic.
Yeah, it was really iconic. And I think there are lots of like sexist questions that I've heard, like not for me personally, but you know, women who are maybe like pregnant and raising money or thinking of having kids, and it, you know, getting asked like very personal questions about if they would be able to like continue running their company efficiently. And I think all of that is finally starting to change thanks to these women paving the way that are showing that they can drive amazing returns and just as much shareholder value.
Absolutely.
As well as drive amazing change and build these sustainable companies that are making a big difference in the world. And it's not a question of like if women can do it, it's just now making sure that they get equal opportunity and equal funding, and finally moving towards that number, because right now only like less than 4% of venture dollars go to women.
Tiny. So that less than 4% of venture dollars go to women. So that could be multiple things. That could be obviously that there's not enough women building businesses. It could be that they're not being seen. It could be that the dollars are not attracted there, or they're not in the right circles, or they're just being marginalized right off the top, just saying, you can't build that, right? Because that's real. That's super, super real. I have a background in this. So past that, so when you actually kind of came to market and you had a refined idea, and you tried to go get some dollars, and you kind of pushed past this and became a woman in venture, and really tried to push and fund and scale a business, what was the initial idea? Or actually, maybe let's bring it back a little bit further, in terms of like, where did Blume start? What's the origin story a little bit here? And then, when you guys actually kind of came to scale, why go that route? And maybe explain a little bit about funding and things of that nature. But I'll get the origin story first, though.
Okay. So the origin story, I'll go way back to when we were...
What's way back? What's
2016.
2016.
Not that long ago.
Oh, man. Way back in the day.
We were actually a different company. So it's not necessarily like the origins of Blume, but we kind of... told you I don't like the word pivot, but we kind of pivoted.
God, buzzword.
Yeah, based
pivot.
on things that we
Pivot.
learned.
Yeah.
So it started with the organic tampons and everything I told you. So I was in law school, always wanted to do something in human rights, and was actually doing like a master's thesis on girls overseas missing school because of their period in India, Nepal, and Africa, up to like a week a month, because they didn't have access to like appropriate sanitation or period products.
So hold up, guys. Imagine getting your homework every month and being like, oh man, I'm pretty overloaded. And then imagine having 25% less class time, or even homework time for that matter. Like, that's huge. That's huge. It's not just a little thing like, oh yeah, like it's a week. What's a week? Like, yeah, that's massive.
And just like over your biology.
Over biology. Not just like, yeah, sorry, luck of the draw, my bad.
Yeah, exactly. And so now, like, how that integrates into our business is we do have like a giving back portion with an organization called Days for Girls, where we help provide like products and like money for sanitation. We can talk about that after. But that kind of around the same time as realizing what was in pads and tampons, and the fact that we have our own issues here in the Western world with taboo and stigma. It's not talked about. And so I called my sister, was like, we should do this, and she was on board right away. So we just
What was your sister doing at the time?
So she was in school to be an accountant.
Oh, she was like, yeah, fuck
yeah. So we had like the traditional Indian careers, like law and accounting, and we were gonna like drop out to sell tampons. So our parents were obviously really happy about that.
Mom, I want to sell tampons. Yeah.
And so we started, and we had like Excel spreadsheets and a Squarespace website. It was like super dinky. Like it was just like not even, I don't know. But it's that whole, the universal law of momentum, where you put something out there and all these people all of a sudden are like helping you, and like random things happened. Like, I don't know why I was doing this, but at the time when I was trying to pay like my student loans, I worked a law job, and then I was being an extra in movies, like for more money.
Yeah, totally. A lot of people did it.
Yeah. And so that was here in Vancouver, and I actually met, shout out to my friend Rohit.
Nice.
And I met him at like 5 a.m. on a movie set, freezing cold, where like everyone's like around the fire trying to warm up, because you know how there's like long periods of waiting time. Yeah. And this is like when I didn't know much about business at all. I didn't know anything about startups, and I hadn't told anyone we were doing this because it was so early. And for some reason, I think he told me that he had a website, and it was like 5 a.m. And I was just like, I'm just going to tell him. So I just told him what I was doing. And it was actually the most amazing thing, because then for the next few hours, he just taught me so much. And then we stayed in touch, and like he helped us set up like simple things that we didn't know, like Google Analytics, Google Tag Manager, Webmaster Tools, like all of the things that actually matter. Like you have this like grand idea, but you don't know how to execute. So he helped me with the like the nitty gritty of just getting off the ground. And so that was really cool. And then I feel like other things interestingly started to line up. And I was talking to another friend about this who's starting a company, and he just said that as soon as he started telling people, he started to meet all these great folks. So I think that's one of the most powerful things about having an intention, putting it out to the universe, Like I think a lot of times people are afraid that their ideas are going to get shot down, or they're just afraid to fail.
People won't believe in them, or
And obviously, you know, it sucks if there's people that are skeptical and put your idea down, but you just got to like obviously take that and learn from it and see what you could do better. But I think once you start to see the dots connect and people like jump on board and want to help you, I think that's a really good sign. And so that happened. This is so long-winded.
No, that's cool. That's the whole point. I told you got like an hour and a half. Take your time. You're good.
And then we got started. We actually went on Dragon's Den.
Nice.
Yeah.
And?
So that was 3 months in. But
oh my gosh. 3 months in?
3 months in, we went on Dragon's Den. So we obviously got ripped apart.
Ooh.
But we did get a deal.
No way.
From Joe Mimran. Yeah.
No way. Wow.
Yeah.
What did you guys get? Oh my God. What was your valuation? The valuations are always so ridiculous.
It was really bad. We only had $30,000 in revenue. And
oh my gosh.
It was something, I can't remember the valuation. It was just terrible though.
What did you ask for? What did you get?
We asked for $25,000.
Oh my God. What were you going to do with $25,000? You didn't even know.
I don't know. We didn't know anything. Luckily that deal never worked out because we ended up actually seeing some good growth. And by the time the paperwork was going to be done, it was a terrible deal. Yeah. And actually they kind of like, I think the show is more
important than the deals.
I think so. Yeah. Cause like, it sounds like a lot of people, like the deals just kind of fall through, which is fine. It was a great experience. So then Dragon's Den happened and then we went to 500 startups in the Valley, like the summer.
So what is 500 startups?
It's like a tech accelerator similar to Y Combinator.
Okay.
So they give you like a chunk of money in exchange for like 5% in stake in your company or 6% stake in your company, as well as like mentorship and kind of introducing you to investors. And the best part about it was spending 3 months in San Francisco with other really smart founders. And for me being from like Surrey and from a legal background and not having been exposed to the startup world, I was like a sponge. I learned so much.
Holy crap.
Yeah. And it helped us really think bigger too. And not be afraid to like put that bigger vision out there.
Yeah. And dream big, talk big, attract big, right? Yeah. Those all are very important. How do you even get in the door at 500 startups? Because there's a lot of people that would love some funding and wouldn't mind giving up a little bit of equity, even though that's maybe not the smartest thing. But how do you even get in the door with those guys?
So we actually hadn't applied because we didn't know it existed.
Oh.
But Joanna, she was here at, like, we used to work out of Hootsuite's office. So she told us they were in town. She signed us up to interview with them. Okay. And so we met them. And then when we interviewed with the team, they were just super shocked. They were like, how have you three bootstrapped this business to like $30K a month in revenue with like nothing? Like we had no cash. We had zero resources.
So how did you bootstrap $30K? Like that's not easy.
Well,
and tampon, like what? Okay. Yeah. How?
We did no paid ads for the longest time.
Okay.
We did, obviously anything we did back then would not work to scale the business, but it worked to get us to where we got. So we would do farmers markets to begin with. Yeah. We started to send boxes to be reviewed by different bloggers, like in Kelowna and stuff. That got us incremental. Like the day we launched, we were so excited, and we literally had my friend's mom signed up and like a guy friend of ours who couldn't even use them but bought it to support. So God. That was the extent of the customers we had, but we were still just like really naive and excited. So we just kind of kept going. And then the review boxes got us some customers, the farmers markets. And then we finally learned how to crack Facebook ads at some point. That was during 500 startups. And then that helped us start to scale. Got it.
So you were selling a subscription-based service. So tell me a little bit about that. So how much is it a month? Like, why would people sign up?
Yeah, so the business model's actually changed a lot. So we're no longer a subscription box.
Sure. So what was the thought back then when you were like pushing to 30K? What was that thought there?
Yeah. Still a viable business. I think it was still a great business because we had awesome repeat customers that were looking forward to their box every single month. But the thought was that you get your period every month. And so if you get, like, people get razors delivered to their door every month, they get chocolate, they get like all kinds of deliveries. It makes a lot of sense to get your period products. You know it's
coming every month. It just makes sense.
Yeah. And like how many times do you, like, if you've like, you know, your girlfriend or your mom, like people in your life that have to like run out to the store at like 1 a.m. because they need.
Wait, hold up. Mom, where are you going? Don't worry about it. I'm like, oh my God, is mom buying weed? No, Joss, mom has her period.
Yeah, exactly. And then it's like super overpriced at the airport and stuff. So the idea was people can be prepared, get rid of that inconvenience, and then also have accessibility to organic.
Yeah, and that's like so huge. I mean, there was a woman that died on Hornby Island, actually. Did you tell me about this?
Was it toxic shock syndrome?
Yep. Did you tell me about it?
I don't think so, but I heard about it.
Yeah. Camp trip. They went to like this outdoor education center, Tribune Bay Outdoor Education Center. Shout out Tribune. And she died in her sleep. She was totally fine.
That's
completely fine.
So fucked up.
And no one could figure out why. And she just didn't. She never woke up. And it was toxic. Like she literally had toxins in her syndrome, in her system rather. And she just didn't wake up, and no one knew why. And then it just went away. And I always was like, how the hell does this just go away? Like someone died. Like imagine if you're drinking, I don't even know, if you're drinking Coca-Cola and all of a sudden like, oh, there's stupid amounts of rat poison in there and you die off of one can of Coke or like a couple cans of Coke. That would be momentous. That would be an astronomical PR scandal. Girl dies because she had a toxic tampon. Nothing.
Yeah, well, the fucked up thing is that like with even the pharmaceutical industry, there's almost all like new medications aren't tested on women because of their hormones.
No.
And so they only pull them off shelves if someone has an adverse reaction.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. You can read about it later.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So there's a
so
lot
the
of
system's flawed in
very
terms of actual
much
testing.
So.
Oh shit.
Yeah.
That's ridiculous. How do you? Oh my god.
Yeah, there's actually a TED Talk about it. I don't know. I guess it's just because some of these things are so entrenched in society for so long. Like even now. So not to go. Okay, this is the last negative thing I'm going to say. Have you heard of the company Hims?
No.
It's like they make erectile dysfunction
right.
medication and then like hair loss meds for men and
Viagra
stuff.
2.0.
Yeah.
Whatever,
so they launched a company called Hers, which sells birth control for women, which is great.
Okay.
But then they sell like beta blockers and like female Viagra, which has side effects of like heart attacks.
Right. I mean, Viagra is not a good thing here, right? Like we all know that's like not a healthy thing, right? Can we agree on that?
Right. Especially like the female Viagra that they're selling.
Sure.
But they're selling it like beautifully branded millennial, like, you know,
gold trim, whatever.
Yeah. And that company has raised like $200 million and has a unicorn valuation in the last like just 3 years or something.
So a unicorn valuation is $1 billion.
$1 billion. Yeah. And so it just goes to show like how much women's health is kind of cast aside and just ignored and an afterthought.
But
because investors understand like erectile dysfunction and male hair loss, you know?
Yeah. They're sitting in the boardroom and they're like, oh, I get that. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a problem.
I've been there. I'm there right now, actually. Matter of fact, do you have any on you? Or
Exactly.
Yeah. So it's really hard for women.
And that $200 million is more than what all of femtech has raised in the same amount of time.
That's so crazy. So in that amount of time, so let's just go back for a second. Femtech definition.
Okay, so I feel like people probably have different definitions, but
for a person with no context,
I guess just like companies that raise venture that are geared towards women's health.
Sure. Okay, cool. Fair enough. Yeah, totally. But that's white space. That's opportunity. Like, yes, it has been cast aside, but people always say like, oh, it's 2019. How are you going to invent new businesses? Like, like everything's been done, or, you know, everything's monopolized. Like, well, actually there's a whole spot that hasn't even been touched or thought about. And is like super serious and not just an afterthought. So shout out to you for going out to that. So let's go back to 500 startups. Now you have a little bit of experience. You're in San Francisco with your sister. So you know someone in San Fran. You rented a hotel. How did you do this? Because you still had student debt. I did still have student debt.
Shit. So thanks to 500 startups for the chunk of change that they invested, because part of that is supposed to go towards like your living.
Nice.
So we rented like a spot close to the office there, and like at 500, the friends we made were the people in our batch.
Of course.
So there was like 30 odd entrepreneur or 30 companies and then like multiple people part of each company. So it was actually so much fun and like kind of like, I don't know how to explain it, but it was just like a 24/7 thing where everyone was hustling on their businesses all summer. Right. So you're in Mountain View. We were actually in Mountain View, not even San Francisco, where there's like nothing. The only thing that's around there is like Google. And so all you really can do is work on your business. Right. Which is all you want, what we wanted to do while we were there. That's what we're there for. And we spent that entire summer just hustling and learning so much. And yeah, it was great.
Right. Awesome. I love it. From there, so that's 2016 still? That's 2017. Where are we now?
Summer 2017.
Summer 2017. So the big question that I have, and like, how did you, because in the early stages when companies are making like literally the first 10, 20, 30, 50, 100K, it's like everything is a grind and you're like literally, you know, scratching and clawing for every client or subscriber or whatever it is, right? How did you like really push revenue past that? Because I feel like there's like a glass ceiling there, or just like some weird esoteric, like, hey, we're past 100K or 200K or whatever it is. Like, hey, the point where you as a business owner is like, okay, we're making money. Because if you're under whatever that number is for you, you're kind of like, yeah, we're a business and there's money coming through, but like, and there's this like weird uncomfortableness. How did you actually like push sales at that point? Yeah,
that's still a struggle. Like that's a struggle all the time.
Sure.
So I think the really big shift point for us was that subscription box business was growing, but not at the pace that we, like in our gut, we're just like, this is like, we're onto something, but this isn't like the thing.
Right.
And so we kept digging deeper, and there were just patterns that we were hearing from our customer base around, because there were other products we actually had in the box every month, like wellness products.
Right.
For the surprise factor and discovery, along with the pads and tampons. And then we started to see these patterns that people were like, I really love that acne treatment because I've never used natural acne treatment that worked before, or a natural deodorant that didn't have a scent. But then the one we had in the box came in like a pot, and you had to use your fingers, and they're like, I want that in a stick form. Nice. So just like really like nuanced details of things that were truly missing in people's routines, especially when it came to like organic or safer personal care products that they trusted. And like we saw a big gap in having an actual brand people could relate to, or that especially girls and women could relate to going through puberty, because nobody wanted anyone to see their secret deodorant or their like ugly pink tampon box. Like it just wasn't a brand that spoke to anyone, in addition to all the other issues with it that we already talked about. So that kind of got the wheels turning, where we're like, there's a bigger opportunity here, and that is to be the brand that girls grow up with, to not only recreate the product line and what they're using, but actually this entire experience and the way they relate to the brand. And like now we not only want to change that, but we want to just change that whole statistic I told you of like what even happens during this period of time, because I think the lack of sex ed, the taboo and the stigma, all of those things impact the way a girl moves through the world.
Totally.
Because there's so much trauma that happens at that age that people don't even realize. Like I am still peeling back the layers of that, you know?
And when you say that age, you mean 9 to...
I would say like...
I don't know.
Yeah, like probably starting as early as 9, when people start looking at you different and telling you what to wear and what not to wear. Yeah. To like things like I used to kickbox and had like a white uniform. And I was like, what do I do now that I have my period? Like all the guys in the class don't really think about that. And my sensei was like a dude. So it's like, who prepares you for that, you know? Right. And now there's all these great innovations like Thinks, which is like period underwear. So it's all just kind of stuff that like women navigate as they go through the world. But in a way, it's not like beauty where you like talk to your friends about like skincare and makeup recommendations, right? Like this isn't, that's changing, I think.
No one goes home and is like, oh my God, girl, this tampon is crazy, you know? Or
exactly.
Maybe they do. I'm pretty clueless.
I think it's definitely getting to that point where like, I feel like overall I've just seen people are so much more open now, which is great.
Yeah. And that's what it's about. It's about starting conversation. Talk about 9 to 12 or 9 to whatever. I don't think people fully understand how important that age is. Like from a parenting standpoint, like, oh, that's a very key point. People or children develop a ton in that stage, obviously puberty, but like for girls specifically, I feel like we have no knowledge around like what actually happens during that age, like physiologically as well as mentally, and why someone like you is still like, well, I'm still kind of like peeling back the layers of that and still haven't really fully dealt with that time in my life. Why?
Yeah, and I would say not even just 9 to 12, but like
I just made
probably
that
9 to
up.
20.
9 to 20, sure, yeah.
Yeah, just in terms of like, well, obviously everything to do with like periods and that, but I think just the fact that you're pulled in the different directions of like growing up, I was like very much into math, art, science. But as you're like, it goes back to, you can't be what you can't see.
Right.
And so you're taught as a woman that, your value kind of lies in what you look like, even no matter what you accomplish. And I think Michelle Obama talks about this, where she's doing like amazing things at the White House, like more than most first ladies probably have.
Most definitely.
Yeah. So many initiatives.
Not even close.
Yeah. And all of America is focusing on her arms. Like at one point there was just an entire like news cycle about her arms and what she wore.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. And so I think with Hillary Clinton, we saw that too, where they would just constantly focus on what she wore, who she looked like, what her husband did. I mean, there was a lot more to that story, but just in a lot of cases,
yes, there was.
There's just,
we can go there. Like,
there's a lot where women face these like pressures that like no matter what they accomplish, or even just like when it comes down to like, you've probably heard of those campaigns like Ban Bossy, where it's like if there's a man and he's like super like a hard ass at work, he's like praised for it, like Steve Jobs. But if it's a woman, she's a bitch and she's bossy. So just stuff like that. And I think there's finding your place, like you said, we're in a predominantly male and masculine business world. And that's something I still struggle with, where I want to bring like who I really am to my business, and maybe not operate in such a masculine nature, and balancing that with really like pushing forward in a world that expects you to have those masculine traits in order to be successful as a woman in business. So I don't know if that makes sense, but
no, it does. Yeah.
Yeah. We had another entrepreneur come in and talk into a fireside chat, and she like, I forget her analogy, but it was something about salmon swimming upstream. It was like a freshwater.
Sounds like it's getting
water.
Good, but like, I don't know.
So kind of like, even like down to the things like air conditioning in offices, it's usually cranked up really high because men wear suits,
right? In
like traditional corporate environments, like legal
gosh.
environments. So you'll see women with like blankets,
right?
Because they're like wearing other stuff. And so she talks about how like, you know, like, because I don't focus too much on the fact that I'm like a woman in business. I'm just like, I am in business, or I am an entrepreneur. Business, This is just what I'm doing. But there's things where it's like more subtle, where if you know, you're a man and you're in the business environment and you're all the salmon swimming in the same direction.
Right.
And it's like easier because you're going towards the tide.
You're
but
running
as a
other
woman,
people's
you're kind of
coattails,
going against the tide. So it's
Totally.
like you're pushing a boulder uphill in some cases.
Definitely. The environment is crafted in a different way that's not ideal, and it's built for someone else.
Yeah.
I understand.
Yeah. So you change, not the environment doesn't change for you.
Right. And so there's two parts of me there. Where the first part of me is like, well, fuck any environment, just do it, just push through it. Like there's that. It's like, well, no, just go. It's easy for me to say that, obviously. And then the second part of that was like, well, because the environment is a certain way, certain people don't even get the opportunity to push. That's a big problem. That's a huge, and we talked about this before, that's a huge net negative, like just for society. We are different fundamentally, no better or worse, whether that's culturally or because of our sexes or whatever. But diversity is a strong suit. We've known this statistically. We can show this. We can show this in companies that are diverse, have good, like on their board of directors, have good mix between male and female. There's different perspectives that are brought to the table. One water bottle is looked at from two different ways, and that can be extremely valuable. And so we miss that a ton if, for instance, half of the population is swimming upstream. And like, I'll go off on a tangent and say that like when we look back on when it's 20, 30, or when it's 1,000 years from now. 1,000 years from now, we'll look back and we'll say, okay, like there was the Stone Age, and then there was like the Bronze Age, and then there was the fossil fuel people, and we'll look at the last age, which will be today, and we'll be like, oh my God, like they were the people that still like mass farmed and murdered animals. We'll probably say that. And we were the people that gave literally 50% of our population, we didn't even give them a chance. We'll still say that of like today, of 2019. Like we'll look back on stats like, yeah, 96% of venture funding goes to men. And you feel like, wow, that was messed up. Or like, hey, they drove around in cars that are full of gas that are literally bombs going, 100 miles an hour in the say like in opposite directions. We'll say shit like that and be like, oh, this is ridiculous. So like, not giving opportunity to 50% of, or I don't know if it's 50%, but let's say 50% of the population is horrendous. It's a net negative for the environment, for the society, for technology, for innovation. We could be further along. I said this to you as well. It's like, what if at no point what if there was never sexism? What if there was never the witch hunts? What if like literally households were 50-50 from the jump in terms of respect or economic status or systematic opportunity? What if it was just 50-50, like from zero, from like the cave, from Mesopotamia? Like imagine where we'd be. That's ridiculous. Like we would be thousands of years ahead because the effect's exponential. And that's why I get pissed off.
Holy shit.
Could you imagine?
That'd be like Avatar.
We'd be like Avatar, bro.
Be like really beautiful world.
It would be crazy. It would be advanced. Where do you want to send people? Where can they find you? Where do you want eyeballs or I don't know, thumbs to go? Where can they go?
Blume.com.
Blume.com.
If they want to shop organic tampons, acne treatment, check out some great blog articles about just skincare and that whole acne campaign I was talking about. So Blume.com, it's BLUME.com, and then our Instagram is @meetblume, MEET, BLUME. Yeah.
Awesome.
Thanks for having me.
Appreciate you. Good night.